Saucy Not Bossy.
Welcome in, everybody. Okay. One of my favorite things about Saucy Not Bossy is I get to bring friends and people that I haven't met onto this forum. But today I have a great friend, not old friend, a current amazing friend named Audrey. Audrey!
Hello.
Okay, you guys ready to laugh today? Because you're going to be, Audrey and I decided to do this today because Audrey, right? We're just like, people should just listen to what we're saying because they probably might laugh and we need laughter, don't we?
I think it speaks so much to the origin of our friendship of like meeting at a big group hang that we're like, wouldn't this be fun if we included some other people?
Let's get back to our friendship. Yes. Okay, so your brain is so much sharper than mine. So what year did we meet?
Oh my gosh. We met so long ago. I think I had bangs, no tattoos, and no nose ring. So it was a very different time. I was still in college when we met. So I would say probably like, maybe like 09. Yeah. So it's been a lot, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, because it was 08. That was like the crash of everything happening. A friend of mine was like, my sister has a house in Austin. You can help her out with her life. And I was like, I need change too. And so I got in the car, drove to Austin, got there, and then she went away for a while. And then I was in charge of that big house.
And you were like,
I knew nobody. And then I gained 30 pounds. It's when Adele's album came out.
Oh, God. Adele owes us all reparations for what that album did to us at that time in life.
But it was rumors. I had the big hair, gained 30 pounds. Yeah, it was amazing.
I just remember that being such a different time in life because also that was, 15, 16 years ago. I had such a different relationship with alcohol. And so we were like out, just doing what you do in Austin a lot. I think we met out at a bar on Rainey Street. And it's interesting because you and I have gone through so many changes since then. But that was such a time of like, oh my gosh, this is my friend's friend. This is your friend's friend. Let's all come together. Let's all just go be debaucherous. And that was so different. So like I also was making different health choices at that time.
So now we're here. And I love that every time we talk, it's like no time has ever passed. That's my favorite.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So what are we talking today? Because you're leading the ship. Because every time I get on the phone with you, I'm so much happier than when I started the conversation. So,
well, I think the origin of this is so critical that we talk about how we ended up on this podcast, which is that I love to send a voice note. I think it's a great way to keep in touch with your friends, especially like I don't have children, so my life can be a little bit more simplified. But when I'm talking to my friends who have kids, I know it's hard sometimes to get on the phone for an hour. So I love to send Shanna a voice note and be like, hey, girl, you are not going to believe what happened. And one of the things that we come back to over and over again, as well with Shauna's wonderful husband, is how much the way people deal with shopping carts tells you about their personality. It's truly a thing that we have gotten into. And so the other day I was sending Shanna a voice note because I had witnessed something at the grocery store that I was like, girl, you're not going to believe. And another thing that we have in common is that we're very see something, say something people. So if you're not acting right, I don't like that. And it sometimes gets in my way. But what happened the other day was I sent Shauna a voice note. She was like, we should talk about this on the podcast. And so the actual story of what happened that day is what I'm going to bring to you now. And it is that I was leaving a major retail chain. I got in my car and I was parked facing a woman who I would say is about our age. Like she was in a big fancy SUV, like a $90,000 SUV, And I saw her see me in the car as she was like loading her family in. Her children weren't young, but she was holding the door for them. She was with her husband. And I saw her pick up her, like a drink and ask someone in the car, do you want the rest of this? And they must have said no, because she hesitates when she sees me, but she turned around and put the trash back in the cart. And yes. And I got so mad because I have worked those jobs. Like I've worked retail. I've worked at restaurants where people treat you as an employee like you're there for everything. And it's like, well, it's their job to pick up my trash. No, it isn't. And I got so mad. And so I rolled my window down and I said, ma'am, you forgot your drink. I was trying to give her an out too and be like, hey, you had a lapse. Like just go back, do the right thing. And she pauses for the longest time and looks at me and she goes, really? Are we really going to do that? And I was like, You tell me, girl, are we really going to do that?
Yeah, the fuck we are. Yes, we
Yeah.
are.
I was
Yes.
like, "Is it not your trash?" And she was like, "Really? Really? All right, have a good day, nice manners." And I just pulled out and drove off. But I was like, I think it's so crazy when people do that kind of thing because to them it's out of sight, out of mind. But I was like, what about the person who works at Target that now has to go pick up your dirty drink?
I
Because
love it.
it's never just a dirty drink. Those are the people who do you know what I mean? It's like you are showing who you are by the fact that you'll leave your Starbucks cup in the car. You're the person who leaves like a diaper in the bathroom. Are you the person who, when you go to a national park, doesn't care if your candy wrapper blows away? Like that is the type of thing where I think it's so important that we're considerate of others, even if you don't immediately see it. And I think that's why you, me, and Chris constantly have these like conversations over text of just like, it's so easy to be kind. Do you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that I think that like the world would be very different if we saw the consequences of our actions more. And I know that that's uncomfortable, but there's so many things that we do that are out of sight, out of mind. Just like that woman's Starbucks cup didn't matter to her. But what was crazy to me about that, like circling back just on the rage of it all, was I was like, you actually went out of your way to litter because she had to walk back to the cart to put the trash in. And I was like, you could have just taken it home. You were already at the car.
Right?
And it was so crazy to me because I think like how you behave when no one is watching matters. But what was crazy to me is she knew someone was watching. And I was like, what is going on? You saw me and you hesitated. And I even gave you an out. And she was just like, yeah, no, I'm still going to litter because I don't care about the teenager who works at this store. And I was like, you should. Why not make someone else's life a second easier? You know,
So
I think
entitled.
so entitled. And what's crazy to me is it's like you will literally put in more effort to inconvenience someone else. You didn't even make your day easier. It's not even like she just left it in the cart. She picked it up, took it back to the cart, and took it back to the cart. And I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then I was just wound up about it the whole rest of the day because I was like, this says so much. Do you know what I mean? Am I crazy? I don't know.
No, and it's the same thing as I watch people pretending to pick up the dog shit when their dog's shit, and they pretend. I'm like, but you have the bag. Make the fucking effort. It's your dog. Like, pick it up.
It's right there. What's so funny to me too about the dog poop thing is that so I have a cat. You know this. She'll probably show up at some point. Um,
Oh,
but people always tell me they're like, "Oh, I could never have a cat because then you have to scoop the poop." And I'm like, "So you're not picking up after your dog?" Is what I'm hearing. I'm like,
right.
they take the same amount of effort. You should actually be doing you what? Like they don't even realize that they've told on themselves in that moment. And I'm like, you're right. You probably shouldn't have a cat.
Right.
But it's so crazy to me because it's like whether it's dog poop or the other one is I witnessed a car accident in the grocery store parking lot. So much happens at my grocery store, clearly.
Ooh.
I witnessed someone back into another car with the reckless abandon of like a Super Smash Brother. I was like, do you realize we're in a parking lot? And I was so upset because I think we've all also been victims of that. You come back to your car and you're like, the scratch wasn't there before. There's no note. And so I watched the guy like pretend to leave a note and go into the store. And I was like, no, no, not on my watch. I felt insane for like 3 days. I just felt like this justice crusader for these people I don't even know to be like, you cannot do that. This is not how society works.
Good. I feel like the universe is putting you in all these situations, or you're just a very mindful person and you look around. Most people don't even look around though. Like they're just in their phones or they're not seeing what other people do. And it's, there's just so many scenarios and even scenarios of violence. You're somewhere and you see something and no one does anything, or they'll get right to their phone. You could have been just sitting there on your phone recording it, but you confronted that woman. I love it.
Phone culture is also interesting because there's always, I think now we've gotten so used to just getting out your phone to film it. I mean, people do it all the time instead of intervening. And at the end of the day, my goal in these interactions was not to shame those people, but just like to have the world have like the cosmic bankers be paid. Do you know what I mean? Where like it's right in the universe that you did a wrong thing and now you have to fix it. I'm not interested in putting that woman online and getting her bullied. That I don't think that's helpful most of the time. But I do think that, there are so many situations where people are willing to go on social media or they're willing to even send a text about something that when it comes to living it, they're not actually doing that. And so, or they're not seeing the consequences of that. Like I was just talking to someone before this who was dealing with basically a gossip situation and that gossip about them had gotten back to them. And it was such a painful thing for her to go through. And it's so unnecessary when it's like you can just have a root cause conversation and that actually accomplishes what we're going for. But I think sometimes it's just easier for people to go and like do the record button and call it a day. But sometimes you have to have these human moments with another person so that they feel it and it really comes through. Do you know what I mean? And I hope people do that for me too.
Exactly. Yeah. But what is been the shift of that? Has that just been social media? Do people just want to be a celebrity? You meet them in person and they're just so
Oh,
blank.
oh my god, don't even talk to me about that. That's what modern dating is like, by the way. I
Oh,
mean, right now, like, I'm literally not dating anymore because I found myself so exhausted of having these like, I feel like a competent written communicator, but I also feel very comfortable with myself in person, and I got so tired of talking to people on the apps because it's the only way anyone meets anymore, and then you meet them in person, and they have the personality of wallpaper glue, and I'm like, "What are we doing?" It's there is no interpersonal skills in real life anymore. And so like I don't know what the shift is. And I hate to be like a tinfoil hat crazy person, but I'm like, it's these phones. It's the phones and the internet. And I miss the times of having genuine in-person interaction. But I think it also makes it so sweet when then you do get a great interaction. The other day I was out shopping again, which this is really painting a picture of me that feels inaccurate. But but I was out shopping and I had one of those days where I was like, "Oh my god, every nice person in this city is out today." Because, you know, women and it was all like women, honestly, which was a really neat commentary on community, is that I had a woman stop me and tell me, "You're so tall. What sport did you play?" And then I told her what sport I played, and she was like, "I've never learned about that." And I ended up talking to this woman at Marshall's for, I don't know, 10 minutes about college rowing. And before it was over, she said, "I'm gonna come to a race." And I said, "I hope you will, Deborah. I'll see you there." You know? And then it's like I go to the next store and I'm trying on dresses and there's another woman in the dressing room and she's like, "That looks great on you." And I was like, "That looks great on you." We were by the end of it, everyone was hyping each other. And so it's like there is these great moments that just feel like such a treat when you get to experience them. And it requires you putting your phone down.
mm,
But at
yeah.
the same time, they're great tools. Like you and I are only able to keep in touch because we have modern technology. So I think it requires some, real evaluation of how you're using your tech. And that can be uncomfortable for people to look themselves in the mirror and maybe be like, wow, I'm not putting in the effort to my in person relationships that I should. Or like even going to networking events for your job or whatever it is. And that's uncomfortable, but it does make it even better when you get to have those nice in-person moments. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, and there's no I like that. I like the way you're framing that because there is no getting around the phones. They're
No.
here probably to stay for a very, very long time, if not next level of things. But with going back to the dating, it must be
Mhm.
really interesting because you are a person that's very strong, you're very open. My husband and I have been together and we met online for like I got on and I didn't mean to get on. A friend got me on and then I got off the same day. But I didn't like 10 years ago was a different world
It was.
than now. What is like how is it so different? Just too saturated or what?
I wish I knew the answer to that, and a part of me thinks that it's because people have been trained into this type of behavior, and I agree with you, it was a different world 10 years ago on the apps. Like, my experience 10 years ago was you talk to someone for a couple minutes, but you'd meet up pretty quickly and have these relationships in person, and I think that it's just one of those things where people have gotten so comfortable behind their keyboard, and, like, it's just grown exponentially over time, and I think to the detriment of actual dating because now, people are so risk averse. And I don't even mean that in the sense of actual safety risk. Unfortunately, as we know, women still have to challenge their safety all the time to continue to date. But I think that what I find is that there is such an unwillingness to even be uncomfortable that is perceived as such a risk these days, and that's early dating, is it not? Is, like, just being like, "Oh, I said a weird thing, I hope they still call." Um, and unfortunately for me, I'm constantly saying weird things, so I'm very comfortable with that part of the process, but it really is so different these days where you talk to someone and online, whether it's that they're willing to say something super denigrating to you, the number of people who right off the bat are asking for things that I'm like, absolutely not. Or if they're just more confident and comfortable, and then you meet them in person and you can barely get a word out of them. It's so, so strange. And I really just think it's a learned behavior of people falling into the bad habits of these slot machine designed apps and forgetting that their words matter too is another thing that I think is so powerful with these phones is like there is someone on the other end. And that is important to remember. Again, seeing the consequences of your words and your actions, like for better or worse, you are talking to someone. So what does that mean? Like, you can make their day or you can absolutely ruin it with your behavior, your words, even your frequency of response. And nobody really wants to get into that these days. And so for me, that's why I'm like, I just can't do it because if you're not willing to be genuine and put in a little bit of effort, then I can't do 95%. Relationships are rarely a 50-50, right? Like I'm sure there's times in your marriage where you need more and your husband gives more. And then there are times where he needs more and you give more. It would be perfect if it was a 50-50, but that's not life. It's just not how it works. Like life is unpredictable. And for me, I need someone who is willing to be agile in that way, and if I can't find it, I'm not gonna beat myself over the head with my iPhone until I get different results, you know? Like, life is short. I'd rather live a joyful life and connect with the people who make me feel good. It feels sometimes like on the dating apps, it's like those animals that get zoo psychosis because they're in cages that are too small, where it's like you do the same pattern over and over and over again. And it's like, because the polar bear isn't supposed to live in Florida. That's what it is, where I'm like, this is not the right environment for us to be doing this. So no wonder we're going to the same 5 stations and then being like, wow, I feel crazy. That is what it feels like to me. So I'm like, I'm just not doing this. I'm uncaging myself.
Okay, your analogy are they're brilliant between the
Thank
slot
you.
machine and the polar bear. Like people need to visualize that. And going back to it, I think the problem is you just need a partner that will be the person that says to that woman, "Hey, you left your drink." And I just feel like everybody's just like, "What's the point of speaking up? What's the point of having the date?" And
Mhm.
they're on, but what's the purpose? It's so hurtful. It's like you get on there, you're not even divorced, bro.
No,
Like, you haven't even settled
never
your
are.
say they never are? Oh,
Never are.
great.
No.
Yeah, great. But you're right, like, the whole getting on there and then what's the whole point? It's like, give me an example, like, did you ever like a person really, like, a lot on the site?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, I have had so many close calls with people where I'm so intrigued by them and they're saying all the right things. And then, I had a guy who was like, couldn't have been nicer. We met in person and it turned out he had lied by his age, lied about his age by like 15 years. And he showed up and I was like, what are we doing? What is this? And he was just like, well, I thought that you would be interested in my personality and I knew you wouldn't match with me if, and I was like, your personality to me now is a liar. So, like, I don't think you thought this plan through. So I've had that happen, but I've also had in early COVID times when we were in lockdown, I had started dating someone at the very, very start. And so we had continued to kind of talk. But, if you remember those times, it was like we didn't know what was what yet. And so we weren't sure if we could even see each other. And so we did a lot of conversations on the phone or texting. And it got to a point where I was like, hey, so like, I'm not asking you to propose to me, but I would love to see you in person. We really had to confront the stages of relationships. And at the end of the day, that made this man realize that he was not ready for any commitment. He wasn't even ready to let me into his COVID bubble. So I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. And this was like a man who's older than me, so I'm 36, and this guy was I think a couple years older than me, and he was like still figuring out what he wanted. And I was like, at this big age, we don't know yet? What are we doing?
Mhm.
So it's so hard because the thing that men in my life are competing for is not competition with other men. It's competition with my own time and with like my female friendships, honestly. So, in the context of that conversation, I'm like, you're not competing with, Steve, who works at a tech company downtown. You're competing with that. I would rather be talking to Shauna about what happened in her life today or how her family is, or the funny thing that my dad said at a barbecue, or whatever. That's what you're competing with is like peace. It's
Mm.
fellowship that I find in friendship. So if you're not going to put that effort in, then I'm certainly not going to waste my time because I have so many strong relationships that I would rather invest in?
Mhm.
And I think that that's, like, such a misconception in the dating game, period, no matter who you're dating. It's like, it can be a man, it can be a woman. The perception that you're competing with other people in the dating sphere is mostly inaccurate in my experience with my friends and my community. It's that you're competing with peace with ourselves.
I love that, and it's like, I don't understand people that wanna balance 3 women or 3 men or whatever you're into at the same time. It's like, can't we I don't I don't get it. What is up with that? So I love what you just said, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what's up with that too, because I think it also is like depends on what type of person you are, which for me, like if I like you, I love you. Just generally, like I have a lot of close relationships because if I'm willing to spend any time with you, I'm willing to invest in our friendship. And that's how I feel about everything. And so sometimes when I see those kind of things, I'm like, how do you have the time, the energy? Like the extra emotion to give because when I'm invested in someone, I really just pay attention and I want to learn, whether it's a new friend, whether it's even like a job. I want to dive in. And I think that that's such a beautiful part of an early anything is that everything is fresh and new and exciting. And so you can choose to see that as like scary and risky, or you can choose to see it as a fun adventure. And I lean towards fun adventure more times than not.
So, where how did you become like this? So the people out there that maybe didn't have strong family members that taught them women in their life,
Mm,
how would you tell someone now that does get scared to put themselves out there, does get scared to say,
mm,
I did see that happen, but I don't
mm.
want to confront it. What are little steps that they can take to at least, get their feeling of voice?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and it took me a long time. What's funny about this conversation is if you talk to my mom about this, she would say that I was so painfully shy growing up that they had to put me in cotillion classes because I wouldn't even look yeah, I wouldn't even look people in the eye, and we did not come from, like, a cotillion debutante family, so this was a very big departure from, like, the culture of my family and what we did, but my mom knew that my social skills were really lacking. I was so uncomfortable in social situations for no reason and to no fault of my family, it just was how I was, and my mom was like, "This is gonna be really difficult for you to go through life if you don't break this habit." So I had to go for those of you who don't know, cotillion is like an etiquette class. And so I had to go every week and they pair you up, you line up with an opposite sex partner and you learn ballroom dancing and you learn manners. And so you line up with someone you may or may not know and then you have to introduce each other to like the basically like the matriarch of cotillion. Her name was Joan, and you had to go up, and so while you were in line, you had to learn something about the other person so that when you went up to Joan, you learned how to do that, that segue of, "Oh, it's funny you mentioned that. This is Steve. Steve is also from Austin, Texas." And then Steve would say, "Thank you so much. It's great to meet you," and then introduce me and give a fun fact. So it's all about that building connections. So that was what I had to learn. I think I was in 7th, 8th grade, so that was like 12, 13. That got me through high school, got me into college. And at some point, I remember reading a quote from Dita Von Teese, who I think is such a wonderful, compelling figure because she is feminine and strong. And I think that those are oftentimes pitted against one another. And I think that she's a badass who wears jewelry and lipstick, and I love that. And she has a quote, to paraphrase, that's something along the lines of, "You can be the juiciest peach in the world, and there's still people who don't like peaches."
Mm,
And that was something that as a young adult woman, I had to really learn because you can try and people please the world around you to death. And at the end of the day, for what? All you've done is compromise your own authenticity because everyone's still not going to like you.
mm.
So for me, I just was like, I have to learn my values and be true to them because at the end of the day, that's who I go to bed with is myself. When I'm brushing my teeth at night and I have to look in the mirror, am I at peace with the choices I've made and the way that I've behaved? That's what was important to me. And I learned that compromising those values and behaving in a way that wasn't in line with my personal morals and ethics was all for nothing anyways. So why not just be the person that I am and know that there's just going to be a certain number of people who don't like me no matter what?
Well, I love you. We need to bring back a modern cotillion because I know you're tall. I'm tall. That's what I learned too. I was put in cotillion class and it was like it was not bougie cotillion class. But you're right. And I remember the boy pushing the chair in, but I was so fat and tall at the time that he couldn't push my chair in, but he was
Yeah.
trying. But he communicated to me that he wasn't like, "Oh, I can't figure." He was like, "Can you just push your own chair in?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay." But you're
Awesome.
right. Like,
Yeah.
but you're right. We need to start having those awkward because I look at my
Yes.
kids now and I'm like, I asked the teacher, going back to authenticity, I asked the teacher the other day, and this is like the biggest parenting win I've had for the last 4 years. Well, one of them, but I asked the teacher, when is Arlo, my daughter, when is she most confident? And the teacher looked at me and she goes, honestly, Shauna, she's like, there's not a moment that I see her that she's not confident. Like, she walks in, she's strong. She goes in and says she's saucy, not bossy. I have her watch people that don't have as much as we do. I have her talk to people that are shy. So, going back to the authenticity, it's like, I want her to build what it is. So, everything you're saying,
Making peace with who you are is so important. And like, that's what you're modeling for Arlo and Cash every day is that you and your husband are true to your values and you behave in a way that you can lay your head down at night and feel good about it. And they see that. So whether you're showing or telling them, they pick it up. And I think that that is a really simplified way of seeing how the whole world is. Like, I love that you asked that question too, because I think my mom seeing in me at a young age that I was going to struggle if I didn't get over that was so critical. And not you couldn't have told me that when I was 12 years old because if I was so mad that I had to do that. I hated it. And I was tall. You and I are both tall and athletic. And that's why I ended up being a college rower, is because I'm about 6 foot tall, flat footed. And when I was going up to other boys in the 7th grade, I was standing over them by about 8 inches. It was brutal, and I said, "Mom, why do I have to do this?" But I so appreciated that she knew because my mom has always worked outside of the home, and she worked in healthcare, and she saw the necessity there, and she knew the life that I was going to have because it's just we follow in the footsteps of the people who came before us in so many ways, right? And my mom saw that and she was like, "I am going to help you now even though you're going to hate me for it." And that age is so prime for slamming doors and thinking everything your mom does is the worst thing in the world. And I look back at that time with such gratitude because it forced me to have those, like, kind of micro discomforts at that age so that now as a woman in the workplace, I'm not having a mental breakdown before I go into a networking event because I know how to go up and say, "That's so funny you say that. It reminds me of," and then I can carry on the conversation. And so whether it's dating, whether it's my job, whether it's just interacting with the world, I think being at peace with yourself is the number one thing. Figure out who you are and like it, you know? Not everyone's going to like you, but do you like you?
exactly. Yep. No, okay, so going back to answering the question is people
Hmm.
that didn't have cotillions, like what you said, little things like maybe a lead in, like that's
Hmm.
funny you said that, or like for people, like because there's stunted people that have
Yeah.
no idea how to put themselves in a situation because they didn't
Mhm.
have a mom, you know? So then what would you say, Mama Audrey? Like what would you say about like a little step people
Yeah.
could take?
I think my little step would actually be, again, something that's a bit self referential is that giving grace to others also means you give grace to yourself. And so being patient with those interactions, if you're not someone who's comfortable, if you haven't built that skill yet, then when you go into using a networking event, because I just went to one yesterday, and using that as something that a lot of us grown-ups have to go do, um, giving grace to others who may not be perfect at it oftentimes translates to grace for yourself. And so when you go into those spaces and you might feel like an outsider, everyone feels that way. And
Mm.
so just knowing that, knowing how you talk about yourself in your head is also how you feel about others, is so important. So if somebody comes up to you and might be a little bit awkward, extending a bit of grace to them, I find just somehow pays in advance that in the future, when you're stumbling over your words or a situation or an interaction, that you're met with kindness as well. And that starts internally.
Yeah.
So even that, you might get to your car at the end of the day and be like, oh, wow, that was awkward. That was uncomfortable. I should have said something different. And looking yourself in the mirror and going, I did great. I tried my best is so important. And it's a lot harder than it sounds. Like we can say all this right now, but being kind to yourself takes a lot of effort. And so it's constantly practicing grace towards others and yourself in those moments where it's uncomfortable. It just is. But allowing people the opportunity to learn, that includes yourself.
I love that. I always say be careful the way you speak about yourself because you're listening.
Yes. I
Yeah.
always tell people whenever I have friends who are doing a lot of negative self-talk, I say, don't talk about my friend that way.
Mm.
Because I'm like, listen, I know you think you're just talking about you, but you're talking about someone I care about too. And I'm not okay with it. So let's adjust how we're talking about someone that I love. And when you frame it that way, it tends to change the conversation a little. Because even if people aren't capable of self compassion in that moment, it almost like breaks the brain a little. And then you go, oh, okay, okay, well, I won't say that about her. No, you're talking about yourself. And so I think that that is really important. It's not always structured opportunities like cotillion, or I've done some professional development courses here in Austin. Um, but it is that every day you face the world with authenticity, and a vulnerability that comes with that is critical.
I love that. We all need a friend like you, seriously. And I'm lucky you are my friend. And it's so funny how parallel we are because when people talk bad about themselves, I'm like, what happens if that was me talking
Right.
myself? Would you allow
Right.
me to talk like that about myself? Yeah, but you're right. Um,
And the next generation hears us too, and I think that's so important. Like, I don't have children, but I have a niece and nephew who I love more than anything in this life. And I don't want them to ever hear and internalize the way that I might talk about myself at my lowest points, because I look at them and I think that they are perfect, growing, changing individuals who just bring so much light to my life. And I don't want them to get hung up on a B plus on a spelling test. And so I have to look at myself and go, are you getting hung up on a B plus of an adult spelling test? Probably. Maybe chill a little, because that's how I want them to see it. And that's how they hear us talk about ourselves. So, and they think we're superheroes. And then when we talk about their superheroes, that they're unworthy, they're unintelligent, they're unhealthy, maybe be kind, lead with kindness. And sometimes that does require some tough love, but that doesn't mean that you are facing the world with anger. It's very different.
And that's the important thing because this is why I did saucy not bossy because I hate the connotation of the boss bitch in your face. And I feel like I'm looking at a lot of women, especially ones going through menopause now, because
Oh,
testosterone comes in with menopause and women that have never really had a voice, they're
mm,
starting to get that "Urgh," and they're like, all right, well, I'm about to tell you what's up because the testosterone's coming in and they're getting aggressive. And I'm like, okay,
right.
but you went from a wallflower to being real aggressive
Mhm.
with your hormones and nobody is liking you and you're not liking you because it doesn't have to always be a battle.
Right.
This is where you have to balance it all out and start the small steps of conversation. Like you didn't walk up to that woman in the car and go, "Hey, fucking bitch," like you just hey, I've seen it. I've seen it all. There's moments that I wanna do that, right? But you were just like, "Excuse me,
Yeah.
accountability over here." Like, "Yeah, what's happened?" And then you let her she still didn't do it, but you didn't take the cup and throw it in her face,
No.
right? It
No,
doesn't
and what's funny is, like, we have experienced each other in those moments of like, "Hey," and so that's why, like, I'm capable and you've experienced it, but as I've grown and changed, I have found that for me, it works a lot better to, like, offer a chance at accountability, but that being strong does not have to mean that you are unkind. I really enjoy that my reputation at my job is that I'm the most talkative person I work with and that I'm down to go for a walk or have lunch with anyone. But that also doesn't mean that if I ask you for something and you don't give it to me that you're not going to get an email at the deadline saying where's my thing. I just think that we can hold both things and that is something that challenges the kind of binary that our brain loves. And again, it requires discomfort. And,
Mhm.
like, we have to build that resilience because it translates to literally everything, whether it's pushing yourself to do another half mile on your run because you wanna do a half marathon this year, or it's forcing yourself to have a confrontation. You don't have to go and swear at people. Confrontation just means, "Hey, you said this. Are we doing that?" Great. And so, like, yeah, I love the premise of Saucy Not Bossy because being strong doesn't mean that you live life in anger. It means that you stand on business and you be true to yourself. And like, I refuse to compromise that I am someone who loves to laugh and smile and give hugs and have a little quip with someone at the office because the only way to get business done is to be a bitch. It isn't. It isn't, and I refuse to accept that, and I think it's so important that we all hold each other to that standard and allow for that with one another, but it takes a village, it takes a village to do almost anything in this life, so I'm so glad that I have a friendship like yours after all these years, all these types of changes you and I have gone through, because I think we've seen this in each other, and that has been the glue that holds us together for so long.
Absolutely. And, like, I do love that. Like, I know you're a lioness. You don't have to show me your teeth all the time. You know what I
Right.
mean? And, I tell people, I'm like, you cannot show your teeth constantly, but it's like you're gonna be my accountability person where I'm like, "Ooh, what do you say about that?" And
Yeah.
if you do it for yourself, do it for a good friend that would look at you and say,
Mhm,
"What are you doing right now? What's happening
mhm,
right now?"
mhm.
So, yeah, I love that. And I love the hugs. Audrey, where I live, it's not the South, right? It's not New York. Everybody has their things. Like the South is like, bless her heart. The New York is like, you
Yeah.
know what you're getting, right? So I'm on
Yes.
the Central Coast and I just, these people, it's a very medicated town. If you go to the
Mhm.
CVS, it is very medicated. But I want to go and hug people, like, parents of friends, Arlo has friends. And so I'm like, it's a
Mhm.
birthday. And I'm like, hi. And people are just so standoffish. And I'm like, that's okay, but I'm
Yeah,
not gonna change who I am, but I'm gonna respect your personal space. Doesn't
yeah,
mean I'm gonna myself up because I went to go for that hug and she didn't wanna receive it. I
yeah,
just won't do it again. And
yeah,
that's what I feel like are steps along the way that you be authentically you. You do like the I'm gonna go for the hug, but okay, you're just not the person I've learned to ever hug again. But
for
I'm
sure.
not gonna hugging people because,
Right.
that one person didn't like the hug.
Which is such a great example because, like, how many times does that happen even with your own children where you're like, "Can mommy have a kiss?" And they go, "No." And you're like, "What? Yesterday, all you wanted to do is give me kisses. What are we doing?" But it doesn't mean that you stop asking them, and it doesn't mean that you stop, like, living that because also I mean, not to say that there's, like, of course, a larger adult consent conversation here, but when it comes to affection, I think if you are somebody who thrives in a good hug, then like that continues to be you while respecting that other people do their own thing. But oh my gosh, the other day I went over, I'm so lucky. My niece and nephew live really close to me. And also their parents, who it is my brother and my sister-in-law, who I adore. They live really close to me. And the other day I was so stressed. There's been a lot going on right now. And so I had to get out of my own head for a day because I just was so wound around the axle. And I had to remind myself of the goodness that there is. And so I called my sister-in-law and I said, "Hey, can I come over? I had an errand to run and also while I was there I was like, Can I just hang out? Is that fine?" And I went and my niece read me some stories. And it was such a wonderful moment because she wanted me to come into her room and sit on her bed. She gave me all her favorite stuffed animals and then she picked out some her favorites. And she read to me. And then I read to her and then it was the most wonderful human moment because she was leaning, she likes to lean her cheek on my arm, so she was leaning over here, and I could feel her warm skin, and I could smell her hair, and I could feel her shake when she laughed at one of the jokes in her stories she's read 1,000 times, and that human moment, I think, like, biologically, there is something to those moments of intimacy and closeness, whether it's with your children, whether it's with a friend, that just resets something in your brain, and it was such a wonderful break from what felt like a lot of heaviness outside of everything that was happening in that pink painted bedroom with princess stickers on the wall. And that is so grounding about just a good hug or like a good authentic moment with someone else. But it requires effort. I had to get in the car and go over there. So those things, you can't just expect life to do it for you. You have to put some of the effort in too. And that's a great reminder to me also, because I'm not always perfect at I'm never perfect at anything, actually. I was gonna say I'm not always perfect at that. I'm never perfect at anything. I'm a person. I'm human. I make all kinds of mistakes. But what I learned in that moment was how important that was to me. And it was such a good reminder to look away from my phone and look at my actual life and realize that it's pretty good.
I love that. It's like, like I watch people when they watch fireworks, like record the fireworks. I'm
Right.
like, you're not gonna fucking look at that again.
No,
Like, put your phone down and it's the experience of the sound, the feel. And so everything you were just talking about, all the senses heightened and just living in the moment. You could be recording her, but then, she changes, you change. Everything in that moment is not that moment with not being
exactly.
I love that, and I want more people to do it, and it's like, I always say to people, ask a friend, "Do you have, like, 5, 6 minutes to just jump on a call with me?" 5, 6 minutes, that's it, and just reset with a good friend, have a quick talk, make the effort, pick up the phone, but
Mhm.
I love that you just let the outside world be everything you can't control, and in that pink bedroom is memories you're making for the
Yeah.
future. I
It
love that.
it's so true, and I think it really applies to a lot of the things that we're talking about right now, whether it's, like, long distance friendship that has gone through a lot of changes, whether it is how we walk through the world, that, like, vulnerability and authenticity takes effort, but it can do so much more for you than you can even imagine if you just step into the discomfort for a second, because saying that you need someone can be uncomfortable. Expressing to your friend, "I need 5 minutes of your time, I need a reset." It can be scary. You're asking for something you're not sure that other person can give. But I find that more often than not, I would say I've got about 100% completion rate on that. When I reach out for help, I am met with help from people. And you just have to give others the chance to rise to that. And, like, it's actually quite easy once you build the habit, but it does require taking that next step to get there.
I love you. I love that. I love all of
You.
your oh my gosh. I always feel better after I get on a conversation with
Me
you.
too.
And now the world gets to hopefully feel better with this conversation because I know I do. But again, the steps along the way of just putting yourself out there and yeah, just don't what Dolly, I love you love Dolly. I love Dolly, your cat.
Polly has a lot of great quotes about authenticity. I mean, she's such an icon for the fact that she refuses to compromise that she's a woman who wears wigs, full makeup, push-up bra, and has plastic surgery, because she's like, "This is how I feel most myself." If you're ever looking for a woman who is unapologetically authentic, but also, like, strong in who she is, Dolly Parton is a great example. That's why I have my little Dolly. I cannot believe the cat has not shown herself around here. My cat's name is Dolly. For those of you, I know, I can't believe it. My cat's name is Dolly, but she is someone who I look to because Dolly Parton herself has had such this massive impact in music. Like, she's had this incredible professional career, but what she's done with that has always been such a standout. Dolly Parton gives more books to the children of Appalachia than the government of Appalachia. And she does that all while never being seen without a false lash, never being seen without being head to toe in sequins. She has started Dollywood. She has started all these initiatives. She does all of this philanthropy. And she also sometimes moves in silence. She does a lot more than any of us see. And I think that, like, that again goes back to what we're talking about here, where that, like, being true to yourself is not always going to get you a round of applause, but I can almost guarantee you that when Dolly goes to sleep at night, she feels good about the stuff she does because she puts it all out there and she leaves it all on the field. And I think that that's such a valuable thing. But Also, as wonderful as she is, there's still people out there that go, I just don't understand Dolly Parton. You
Exactly.
can't win it all. Dolly's not going to stop doing what she does. She's not going to come out in, the clean girl aesthetic and an aloe jumpsuit because a teenager in California doesn't understand her. She's Dolly Parton.
I love it. And another thing to learn from Dolly too is like, if you are having a bad day, go and buy a cute dress at Marshall's,
Yeah,
or wash your face, put a little bit of makeup on, or brush
something.
your hair
Brush your
and
hair.
out the door. And sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna dress today in case my worst enemy is gonna look at me. I'm like, so I can feel good in my body and game on. You know what I
Isn't
mean?
it true? Well, and you and I both still live so close to where we grew up. And so there's like honestly a pretty good chance we're gonna run into someone that we know. And so yeah, I mean, there are days when I go out of the house and I'm like, Lord help me, please do not let me run into my worst enemy. And there's other days where I'm like, I dare you, universe, to send me my worst enemy because I know that I'm killing it right now. And even if I don't look my best, I know that I'm living true to who I am. And so if I see that person, just because I have a bare face, my hair's in a ponytail, I might have just gone for a run or something. Actually, no, I've never just gone for a run, but I might have come from the gym. It might have come from the gym. I'm not running ever. I already ran all the miles I have to run in my life, but like I love myself. And so if I run into someone and I'm like, all right, I got a big old pimple on my chin, I got dark circles, but like I like me and I like that interaction. So I'm not going to sweat it. And I think there's so many badass women that we can look to for that. You are great at that. I think that authenticity is something that you and I bonded over in the very early stages of like, you and I met and were immediately so silly and like laughing about all kinds of nonsense. And there's some old pictures that I'm not going to dig them out because you and I know what are on those pictures. And like we bonded over being authentically our weird selves. And so like that, yeah, and I think that's what has kept us together for so long and I think is a valuable thing for all of us to learn. But it's because you invest in yourself, whatever that means to you. You don't have to be kind to yourself the same way that I feel I'm kind to myself, but do something.
Mm, okay, we're ending it on that because that is brilliant, and I love you, and this is
I love
so
you.
good. Be kind to yourself. Oh, this is so good. That's
Thank you
wonderful.
for having me on, and thank you for spreading a message to our community, however that manifests. I think that letting people come into their power is such an important thing, and you're helping people do that every day. So thanks for being you.
You do too. Thanks for being you. I love you.
Love you.